She banged on the door with a badge flashing under the porch light and shouted, "Open up! This is the HOA police! We're here to search your house!" I froze for a second, staring at the so-called uniforms outside, their patches crooked and cheap, their belts hanging loose. My neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, whispering like something serious was happening. One of the men raised a baton and yelled, "Step aside or we'll force entry." I clenched my fists, ready to push back, but before I could move, my wife walked calmly out of the kitchen, phone in hand, and whispered to me, "Don't worry, they're not cops. I've been tracking them for weeks." Her eyes were sharp, steady, like she had been waiting for this exact night. Then, with the quietest grin, she said, "Tonight, they're walking straight into their own trap." The fake cops didn't expect hesitation from me, so when I stood my ground, they started shoving the door harder. The wood creaked and splinters fell as one of them growled, "You're obstructing law enforcement!" My wife stepped forward, not a trace of fear in her voice, and said, "Funny, real law enforcement doesn't use fake badges from eBay." The man froze for a second, and I saw doubt flicker across his face. She pressed a button on her phone, and suddenly I heard faint clicks and static. Their radios lit up, but it wasn't their channel. It was hers. "Every word you've spoken tonight is being recorded," she said coldly, "and my team already has your van surrounded." The men exchanged nervous glances, and for the first time, I realized something bigger was happening. She wasn't just exposing them, she had been waiting to pull the rug out from under their entire operation. One of the men tried to bluff his way out, puffing his chest and barking, "Lady, you don't know who you're messing with. Step back before we drag you out." But my wife only tilted her head, almost amused. "Drag me out?" she repeated slowly, then pointed toward the end of our street. Through the blinds, I saw dark SUVs idling silently, headlights off but engines running. The fake cops didn't notice yet, but I did, and my pulse spiked. My wife leaned closer to the doorframe, speaking just loud enough for them to hear. "I've been undercover in your so-called HOA task force for 3 months. I know every scam, every fake eviction, every family you've threatened. And tonight," she paused, letting the silence cut through the night air, "is the night you all fall." The ringleader laughed nervously, trying to mask his fear, but his hand trembled as he reached for the knob. That's when the sound of multiple doors slamming from the SUVs echoed down the street. Heavy boots hit the pavement, and real agents in tactical gear closed in fast, their flashlights slicing through the dark. The fake cops spun around, panic flashing in their eyes. But it was too late. "Federal investigation," a deep voice barked, and suddenly the so-called officers who had been threatening my door looked like cornered rats. One of them tried to bolt toward the side alley, but a spotlight pinned him before he could take 2 steps. My wife stepped outside, calm as ever, showing her own badge this time, one that made the neighbors gasp. "You've been running a fake enforcement ring under the HOA's name," she declared, her voice carrying like a hammer on steel. The ringleader stammered, "We were just following orders from the board." But my wife smirked, crossing her arms. "Perfect, because the board is next." The crowd that had gathered at the end of the street murmured, their phones raised, recording everything. The fake cops realized not only were they were caught on camera for the entire neighborhood to see. The ringleader's face twisted as real cuffs clicked around his wrists, but instead of shutting up, he shouted toward the cameras, "The HOA runs this neighborhood! You can't touch us!" My neighbors gasped, some backing away, others whispering in shock. My wife didn't flinch. She stepped closer until her eyes locked with his. "You just confessed on video," she said coldly, "and that's going to bury every single person you're protecting." He tried to lunge at her, but the agents shoved him into the van. Another fake cop, sweating bullets, muttered, "They promised us immunity, said no one would ever know." My wife leaned down, her voice sharp as a blade. "You were promised lies, and now you'll help us tear their whole network apart." For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about me or my house. It was about dozens of families they had bullied and robbed. And tonight, with the whole block watching, the empire they built on fear was starting to collapse. One of the men, cornered and shaking, suddenly started talking too much. He blurted out the HOA president's name, the same polite woman who'd waved to me every morning with a coffee cup. My stomach dropped. My wife didn't look shocked, just steady. She clicked a folder from her jacket and held it up so the streetlights hit the papers. Bank transfers, email threats, fake invoices showing the board paid these men to scare people off their lots. "They weren't just pretending to be cops," she said, voice low and hard. "They were collecting dues for evictions and selling threats like a business." Someone in the crowd shouted, "That's Mrs. Langley!" And all at once the friendly face I knew became the center of a live accusation. The man who'd confessed tried to take it back, stammering that he'd been paid off, but my wife stepped forward and smiled the kind of smile that made liars sweat. "You gave them receipts," she said, tapping the papers, "and you gave me one more thing, your confession." The neighbors whispered, phones raised, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because the proof was out, dread because this reached higher than I thought. As the agents led the ringleader past our porch, a neighbor shoved a video to my wife showing a dark meeting last month where the HOA president handed envelopes to a masked man. And in that clip, behind her, a license plate flashed I hadn't seen before. My wife looked at me, eyes colder now, and said, "This was never just about fake badges. Whoever owns that plate runs a network. If they're connected to the board, we just opened a door to something much bigger." The crowd buzzed louder, some people yelling questions, others demanding the HOA president be dragged out right then. But before the agents could even move toward her house, headlights flared at the corner of the street. A sleek black SUV rolled up slow, tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. The van holding the arrested men shook as the ringleader started banging on the inside, screaming, "That's him! Don't let him leave!" The agents snapped into formation, weapons low but ready, while the neighbors scattered back onto their lawns. My wife's jaw tightened. She whispered to me, "That's the plate from the video." The SUV idled, engine rumbling deep, then the back window slid down just a crack. A voice calm and smooth drifted out. "You've made a mistake, agent. This neighborhood belongs to us." My wife didn't blink. She raised her badge higher and shouted, "Step out of the vehicle now!" For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then the SUV peeled off, tires screeching as it tore down the road. The agents jumped back into their trucks to give chase, but my wife caught my arm before running after them. "Stay here," she said firmly, her eyes blazing, "because when I bring him down, this entire HOA empire falls with him." The agents peeled away down the block, and my wife sprinted after the SUV, boots thumping, and for a wild second, I felt both proud and terrified. Then a neighbor shoved something into my hand and mouthed, "Give that to the agents." It was a small manila envelope with Mrs. Langley's HOA ledger I'd never seen before. Names, numbers, account transfers that didn't add up. As I flipped through it, my phone buzzed. My wife. "Trace the plate. It's tied to Redcliffe Holdings. Remember the developer who offered you cash for your lot?" My stomach dropped because I did remember. 5 years ago, I'd laughed them off, refused to sell. Now the ledger showed Redcliffe wiring money to a shell tied to the HOA board, and one line read, "Quiet removals, code green." A little girl in the crowd pressed a USB into my palm without anyone noticing and whispered, "My mom keeps the receipts in her closet. She's scared." I felt the hair on my neck rise. This wasn't just local bullying. It was a scheme with a map and names leading straight to people I'd trusted. I stepped onto the porch, and while the neighborhood watched the chase unfold down the street, I looked at the papers and said out loud so everyone could hear, "You can't hide behind a smile when your hands are full of other people's homes." Before I could take another breath, the sound of sirens swelled back toward the block. The SUV that had fled was now boxed in by federal units at the far corner, red and blue lights bouncing off every window. My wife emerged from the chase, walking steady, eyes locked on the man being dragged out of the luxury vehicle in a tailored suit, the same developer who once offered me that too good to refuse cash. His confidence cracked as neighbors booed, phones recording every second. "You thought you could buy us out," my wife said, stepping into the glow of the headlights. "So you built a fake police force to scare families off their land." The man sneered, but the ledger and USB were already in the agent's hands. One of them raised it high and declared, "This isn't just HOA fraud. It's racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy." The neighbors who had once whispered in fear now cheered, voices rising as Mrs. Langley was escorted out in handcuffs too, her coffee cup still trembling in her hand. "You can't do this! This is my neighborhood!" she screamed. But no one believed her anymore. Children clung to their parents, people cried with relief, and for the first time in years, the street felt free. I looked at my wife, hair messy from the sprint, badge catching the light, and I realized she had been fighting this battle long before I knew it existed. She slid her arm into mine and whispered so only I could hear. They thought fear would keep everyone silent, but the moment we stood up, they collapsed. The developer was shoved into the van, Langley shoved into another, and the whole block erupted with shouts of victory. My wife lifted her badge one last time and told the crowd, "This land, these homes, they're yours. No one can take that away from you." I glanced at the American flag hanging from my porch, swaying in the night air, and felt my chest tighten with pride. After everything, only one thought burned clear in my mind. I didn't fight for this country to be told I couldn't live on my own land. Tonight, justice wasn't just served, it was claimed, and it belonged to all of us.